And now I would like to introduce Professor Josef Estermann. Good morning, Josef.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Welcome to our symposium. We are so pleased and honored that you are part of the symposium today. I will just introduce you and then allow you to give your presentation. So Josef is an academic, a philosopher, theologian. He's focused very much on Latin America. He's worked as a professor in the Bolivian Catholic University and also in one of the universities in La Paz, and was also based at the University of Lucerne, and has developed a particularly unique knowledge of the indigenous peoples of South America. His talk today is Humanity Under Pressure, Some Remarks from Indigenous Thinking and Dialogical Philosophy. Thank you very much, Josef. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and greetings to all of you who are online connected with us from Ukraine, especially all people now listening, but also people from the other nations and states all around the globe. I'm glad to be with you. I will expose a little bit different as my former speaker did, because I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a philosopher and theologian. I have some connections to psychotherapy because my wife is a psychotherapist, and I also worked in the formation of for psychotherapists in Bolivia and Peru, especially the philosophical backgrounds. And I think it could be useful to give a little bit also a philosophical approach to the main theme of this symposium, humanity in times of war, in times of conflicts, in time of genocide, because what is on stake is humanity, I think. So I will give you, I will introduce first a little bit the problematic we are dealing with. I can share the screen. Just a moment. I hope you can see now the screen. Yeah?
Yes, we can see the screen. Thank you, Josef.
Okay, so my contribution has the title Humanity Under Pressure, Some Remarks from Dialogical Philosophy and Indigenous Thinking. As Patricia said, my main field of interest has been for a long time intercultural philosophy. Of course, I had a formation in what you call Occidental or Western philosophy. So I will also stress some remarks on Western philosophy, but then I have been living for about 20 years in the Andes, in the high regions of the Andes of South America, in Peru and Bolivia. And I got in touch with this special kind of philosophy called Andean philosophy or Pachosophy, I call it. So my contribution has the following parts. I will introduce briefly, then I will give you the vision that humankind of humanity is under pressure from two sides, from two different levels or perspectives. Third, these two tendencies have something in common, which has to do with the dominant paradigm of thinking about humanity and of conflicts, and which has what I call a conflictive anthropology. And I will present you then two counter paradigms to this dominant conflictive anthropology On the one hand, Emmanuel Levinas, humanism of the other, and on the other hand, Andean philosophy and stressing interconnectedness. And then the last point, I'd like to give some remarks or perhaps some points about what does this mean for the work as psychotherapists. So please, I know that you are not specialized in philosophy or theology, but I will really explain all what I am using technical terminology. I'd like to start with two quotes. Both quotes are from monotheistic religions, one from Judaism and the other from Islam. And I do it really intentionally because nowadays in our world, these two religions are more under suspicion to be factors of dehumanization. No, the one what we have seen in the Gaza Strip, and the other what we have seen since a long time of Islamistic terror and war. And I wanted to counter it by two quotes. One and both agree with the enunciation: to kill a person is as to kill mankind. That's a strong sentence. In the Talmud, it is as follows. It says that whoever destroys a single life is considered as if they had destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a single life is considered as if they have saved an entire world. And almost the same, a little bit different, you can read in the Quran. It states that whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had killed all of mankind, and whoever saves one, it is as if he had saved all of mankind. I think this quote, or this double quote, gives us a little bit the background to what I want to explain you about. How can we define humanity, humanness of human beings, but also in a broader context of how humanness and mankind is acting in a world which is interconnected, and where also other living beings have their right to live. And I say it here, we are dealing with a context of war. Most of you live in the Ukraine and suffer a lot from the situation of war. Even though I think it's important to conserve our dignity as human beings and also to reflect on what human being means in a broader context. And I think philosophical reflection sometimes can contribute a little bit to distance a little bit from the actual context, but not ignoring it, of course. I try to give you what I show you, always being aware of the situation of war, not only in Ukraine, but in Iran, in Sudan, in Congo, etc. We are living really a situation globally of disorder, of dehumanization, etc. As I analyze a little bit the situation on a global level, I think humanity, also in the sense of humanness, is under pressure from two sides. The one is that we see that human dignity or the dignity of the human person is more and more ignored. We saw wars, new slavery, human traffic, abuse, sexism, racism, xenophobia, neo-fascism, neo-feudalism, dictatorship, etc. That is the level of political and social convivence of human beings. And I think we see it in the last 20 years. It has increased a lot, that it's not so obvious as it has been before. For instance, with the Declaration of the Universal Human Rights, 1948, that all human beings are equal. It's more the opposite, that a lot of politics we can see sustain that human beings are not equal. And that reminds me of George Orwell in the famous Animal Farm, when he said, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And something like we see today, all people are equal, but some are more equal than others. We have a huge gap between people who are immensely rich, with the number of billionaires has doubled the last 2 or 3 years. And even this has to do with wars, because a lot of people has also taken profit from the war industry and the development of artificial intelligence in order to technologize more war and warfare. So this panorama, I think it's clear, it's quite common, but I'd like to press also the second one, because it has to do each with the other. That means ignoring the dignity of non-human nature. That is what we call climate change, what we call the ecocide, what we call the ecological disaster, etc., etc., exploitation of animals, pollution of soils, pandemias, etc. I think it sounds a little bit not very common that I talk about this here when we talk about humanity, but I think the treatment of the non-human nature, so-called non-human nature, has a lot of to do of how do we treat humanity. Mainly feminist philosophers have stressed this point, saying that the treatment of women in the history has a lot to do of the treatment of nature. Because in the history of the ideas, women were often associated with nature. And you know that why the biological constitution of women has been associated more to natural cycles, as the monthly cycle, etc., as the moon cycle, etc. And so women were associated more with nature. And the oppression of women by the patriarchy has the same roots as the oppression of nature by capitalism, by imperialism, by exploitation of nature, etc. So I think, and when I will talk about indigenous thinking, we see it very clearly that anthropology, so the image of human beings, who is a human being and the dignity of human being, has a lot to do with the question of ecology, with the question of how we see life in general, not only human life, but life in general. It has to do with the conception of life. So these two tendencies to ignore dignity, to ignore humanity via violence, via different strategies of dehumanizing human beings, groups, nations, minorities, etc., and the tendency to dehumanize nature, to ignore the dignity of human nature, has something in common. The one is the cosification of human being. Cosification means to make a thing of human being. Human being is like a thing, like something you can manage, you can manipulate, you can, of course, describe. And we know that big data nowadays is pursuing these, that human being can be quantified in totally via the genome or via data we get from a human being. So human being is to be changed into a huge number of data which are important for the market and which can be important for the transhumanization. There are a lot of tendencies we can see in big data. For instance, Elon Musk with his project SpaceX and others, that we are heading for transhumanism. So human being has to be overcome. As Nietzsche said almost 150 years ago, that a man is only a defective being and has to be overcome by a Superman. And nowadays it's just the Superman is a robot or is a cyber being, because human being has always some defects which we have to overcome. That is the dream of a lot of people who live with this big tech ideology. So the point is that we make of human being a thing. And later on, I will, when I talk about Emmanuel Levinas, we can see clearly that this cosification of human being is the condition of the possibility to carry on war, to kill people. You have first to cosificate human being in order to kill a thing and not a person. Then the second point, the economization of human life. I just talked a little bit about it, but I think when we talk about happiness, for instance, the brutto national product is an indicator of if people are happy or not. And perhaps you heard about the great happiness index of the state of Bhutan, a small nation in the north of India, in the Himalaya. And they introduced another concept, not the economical quantity of beings, of wealth, but the happiness indicator. That would be also an alternative to the economization of human life. The third one, the denaturalization of human person. Perhaps you think that the dignification or the humanization of human people has to do with not with the naturalization of human being, but more with the access of human being to collective goods, to social security, etc., etc. That's all a right, I think. But we are also in front, or we're looking at the process of denaturalization of the human person. That natural factors are more and more secondary or tertiary. And there are huge projects with billions of dollars inverted to overcome mortality, to create eternal life, practically, to denaturalize a human being, for instance, to practically to store human mind, all our recordings on the hard disk, as to say. Of course, this is some kind of anthropology which has to do with identify or define human being as conscious beings who have some neurophysiological processes. Fourth, the substitution of ethics by brutal force and propaganda. I think we are facing the change of political, how do you call kindness? How politics is done nowadays. It has it's more harsher than 20 years ago, 30 years ago. There are a lot of lies. There is propaganda from a lot of sides. And the threat of brutal force is, you can hear it every day. So it seems that we are again in the times of the right of the fittest, of the right of the most powerful, which can impose him or herself on the others, and not the right of those who have rights. Hannah Arendt said once that the basic right human beings have is the right to have rights. Because before of other rights, it's important that human beings have rights as persons. And we are now in a transition phase, I think, that these kind of rights are demolished and substituted by the right, if you can call it the right of the most powerful, of the most, the one who has more money, or the one who can shout louder, or the one who has access to the huge platforms of internet platforms, etc., etc. The fifth, re-feudalization of societies. I think it's not the feudality of medieval times that you have nobles like counts or kings who are above the ordinary people. Now it's more the oligarchy. That means people who have a lot of money and who can really govern the world. I stress again Elon Musk as an example, who is now a billionaire in the sense of European definition, billionaire. It's a trillionaire in American definition. It's incredible. That means that one person can almost govern the whole world because he is rich. And the last one, brutalization of language and media, of course. You know a lot of examples of this. I don't have to explain. I now want to introduce two counter paradigms, two counterexamples to these main stream trends I was showing you. One comes from dialogical philosophy, and as representatives, there are Emmanuel Levinas, Martin Buber, Karl Jaspers. And I will talk about Emmanuel Levinas because of different reasons shortly. Emmanuel Levinas is from Lithuanian origin and has a lot of common with Ukraine. Lithuania is under pressure too from Russia and has always been a minority nation in Europe. Emmanuel Levinas emigrated to France and he was teaching in Paris. He is Jew. He's a Jewish philosopher, like Martin Buber. Karl Jaspers is not a Jewish thinker, but is more inspired by Christianity. But I stress Emmanuel Levinas, and mainly because of his humanism of the other. So that's the title also of one of his publications, Humanism of the Other. And the second counter paradigm will be indigenous philosophy, Andean philosophy as Pachasophy. I will talk about this expression of Pachasophy. And there, the main concept is interconnectedness. Well, it's not easy to resume the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas in such a short time, but I will try to stress the main features of his philosophy. In Western philosophy, and not only in the 20th century, Western philosophy has been a philosophy of ontology or theo-ontology. That means the thinking of Western philosophy started with being in general, with substance in general, and came then down slowly to individuality, to personality, to interpersonality, and to anthropology. I think the counterexample of Emmanuel Levinas is Martin Heidegger, another famous philosopher of 20th century, who has been a philosopher of being, and both had some struggles, of course. Emmanuel Levinas defines human being not by his or her superiority because he is capable of thinking or reflecting, as René Descartes did in the beginning of modernity. But he defines a human being by his capacity to be an ethical being. So that his philosophy, Levinas' philosophy, is also called as a fundamental ethics, but not an ethics in the traditional sense of the word, of norms we can take out of some perceptions or whatever, but that human being is in itself, in him of herself, an ethical being, a being who has some values, who lives values, and who brings over values to others. I just mentioned here a few concepts taken out of the very rich philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas. The first of all is the concept or the figure, perhaps the symbol even, of face. Face. That it's difficult in language. I wonder how it's in Ukrainian. But as he was teaching in France, he made a difference between face and visage. In English, you have also face and visage, but it's not so. In German, it's better. Gesicht und Antlitz. So that are two different concepts, face and visage in French. He wants to stress that what a face or a visage is expressing is not only a photography, is not only a representation of a person in the sense of how he calls it like a plastic representation, but it's a voice, it's a perception, it's a norm. And the norm says, here I am, I have my dignity, do not kill me. When we really meet the face, when we really are in the relation face to face, we not only see the person as with his name and family name, his history, etc. No, we see a claim. And this claim is, do not kill me. Levinas says even, and that is important for, I think, for situations of war, as a lot of people are living nowadays in Ukraine, in Iran, Sudan, Congo, etc., that we can only kill another, that says Levinas, we can only kill another person when we do not see him in his face. That means in order to kill a person, we have to cosificate him or her first. We have to make out of this face a thing or some plastic, some sculpture, not in order to silence this claim, these ethical claims, do not kill me. He says, meeting somebody really face to face, it's impossible to kill. It's just impossible, ethically impossible. Of course, physically you can, but ethically you cannot kill somebody when you are in front of his face, which says, do not kill me. That's very strong, but it has to do with his philosophy that out of the face comes, he calls it the glory, that means the dignity which human being has as human being. And so that's important. And most of the wars nowadays are wars where people are not confronted face to face to each other, but they there is technology that where you do not see any human being, and just the bomb comes down with the drones, etc. You have no images of the other, of the faces of the human beings, and that makes it possible to kill, because you kill things, not faces, not human beings. The other concept, and that is why Emmanuel Levinas is perhaps the most outspoken representatives of philosophy of alterity or otherness. He's, I think, the philosopher of alterity in the Western tradition. And for him, the other, and the other is male or female, the other as a human person, is for him the source of sense and ethics. So the other gives me my dignity. And that is perhaps more difficult to understand because we are accustomed in Western philosophy to define our dignity from ourselves, from within. No? Cogito ergo sum, Descartes, etc. My ego, myself gives me the dignity. Levinas says, no, the other gives me the dignity. The other imposes me with his sense of ethics and gives me, regarding me face to face, my dignity. Of course, this is an ideal situation, face to face, which occurs not very often, but it's for Levinas the how do we call it? The main situation where human dignity comes out of. But in order to have some criterion of equality or justice, you need what he calls the third. You need as something, the third person. Now, in the face-to-face relationship, these two persons are incommensurably. They cannot be measured because there is no measure, a common measure. The other is always other than me, and I am other for the other. So there is necessary some kind of third principle, which is the principle of justice. And I think this is, in times of war, also important. Not only one is against the other in collective sense or in individual sense, but that there are also a viewpoint which is the third. And the third, of course, is also a human being, which can mediate between the two. But I stress the philosophy of authority of Levinas that he does not see that as the starting point. The starting point is not the common ground. The starting point is the other, the face of the other, the glory of the other, the ethical claim of the other. Do not kill me. That is the starting point. And out of this starting point, we come then to the third and to justice. Of course, Levinas, as also a Talmud scholar, he was also interested in the other with capital letter and in transcendence. For him, the main transcendence is between me and the other. The other is the transcendent being for me, because I cannot really share with the other if the other does not give me an answer to my ethical claims and to his ethical claims. I want to go on to the language, which is very important for Levinas. Because
Josef, I apologize for interrupting you. We just have 5 minutes left for your presentation. I'm sorry to give you a time warning, but I see how many slides you have. Thank you.
Right. That's right. Okay. I go on with Andean philosophy, interconnectedness. I think I can do it in in almost 5 of perhaps 10 minutes. Andean philosophy is very different from Western philosophy. Western philosophy is, as I said, stressed on substance and individuality, which come together, if it's possible, in interpersonality and intersubjectivity. Andean philosophy starts with interrelatedness. The axioma of rationality is very important. That means all is related with all. All has to do with all. No, this integral or holistic principle. And that is called Pachasophy. That means Pacha, the principle of Pacha in Andean thinking. Pacha means a dynamic duality. Not dualism, but duality. And out of these main axioma come principles of complementarity, correspondence, reciprocity, and cyclicity. That means that all life has to do with complementary processes, has to do with correspondences between, for instance, the world above and our living world, has to do with reciprocity. I give you something, then after I get something from you. Cyclicity, that time is not an ongoing linear process, but goes via cycles, like spirals. And life is an all-embracing force, pantheism. Life has to do with all beings, not only human beings, not only animals or plants, also mountains and rivers and even stones have life. And the main focus on what life will be has to do with balance and harmony in a cosmic sense. So also when we talk about mental health, of health in general, health is just a state of balance. But balance not only in the sense of biological balance in my body, but an integral balance with the social aspects, with the cultural aspects, with the spiritual aspect. And human dignity has to do with the function human being have. And Andean philosophy says human being is a chakana, that means a bridge. Human beings are bridges. Bridges in the ritual sense, bridges in the social sense, bridges in the psychological sense. Some consequences for our work as psychotherapists, and with this I will come to an end. I think it's important to stress the face-to-face encounter. Because there we can see the revelation of the other, of his or her dignity, his or her claim, not only ethical, but also his claim. See the other as incommensurable. That means we cannot practically explorate from us to the other and say, the other is more or less the same as me. Levinas would say, no, it's totally different. And that has to do with cultures, but has to do also with persons. Every person is part of the cosmos. That is the interconnectedness I was talking about from an indigenous point of view. We are interconnected, yes. Even in times of war, we are interconnected with our enemies, as hard as it sounds. But yeah. We share our bodily existence with all beings. That means via our bodily existence, we are connected. We are interconnected, and that is the base for compassion. And compassion not only for human beings, but for all beings. And I think one other aspect is also the task to rehumanize the so-called enemy, because enemy is always a construction we make, and we heard about it in the former speak. And we have to look for a higher level of balance and harmony. And with this, I will finish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Josef. I feel that I hurried you towards the end there, but I would thank you particularly for your power of thinking, your deep thinking, and the ways in which you've given this as a gift to all of our participants, particularly those in Ukraine today. I think many of your thoughts carry such wisdom and are helpful to us. I think the Andean philosophy is really helpful to us. And then that last part, how it helps us in terms of our work as psychotherapists is really, really helpful to us. And as you can see, lots of people agree with me because they're sending their emojis up the screen. I noticed that there were several really interesting comments coming through on the chat. So please may I invite people to bring these as comments or questions to Josef in the round table this afternoon. It will be really interesting to hear the comments that people have because there was some interesting things there. Okay.